What is going on, guys? So today we're back with another Pokemon Masters video, and today we're actually going to be continuing on with our tier list. So today we're going to be taking a look at 4 stars and kind of breaking them down into their specific roles like Strike, Tech, and Support, and we're going to basically try to put them up against each other and kind of compare them and kind of figure out how good they are, I guess. So first thing I do want to preface this with is that tier lists are completely subjective. It is extremely hard not to put some sort of bias into them. Therefore, these are my opinions and how I feel about the sync pairs. I'm not necessarily going to try to put too much weight into oh, well, these sync pairs are really good in co-op. These sync pairs are really good on their own. These sync pairs are really good in Battle Villa. I'm just basically going to take as much of a broad picture of the game and try to place these sync pairs in a tier list based on just their core kit and how good they are and how they interact with other sync pairs in the game. So whatever mode you're in, these ratings may slightly change, like in the 3-star tier video. It hasn't come out as of this recording, but I'm sure by the time it comes out, a lot of people are going to complain about Pikachu not being high enough, about just random stuff, because Battle Villa is so new. That's just kind of what's in people's minds, and that's fine, because I tried to explain in that video that with certain modes, of course, things are going to get better. With sync grids, things are going to get better. So I'm also not going to try to take too much sync grid into consideration. I will definitely mention that wherever I put a sync pair, usually a sync grid will increase their tier at least by 1 tier, unless they just have a complete terrible tier or a sync grid. So let's go ahead and jump into this. We are going to start with our strikers. We're just going to basically work our way from the top to the bottom and just kind of look at every single thing that we've got here. So first thing that we have is actually Bruno with Machamp. And Bruno and Machamp are kind of in this weird situation where I like them, but they're more to me like a backup to Karina and Lucario. They're a solid striker, but they're not necessarily I absolutely always want to pick Bruno. So maybe we might come back and reassess this, but maybe they're an A to B tier sort of kind of thing. Not really a huge fan, but they definitely do have a strong place, but just not an amazing one. So let's hold off on, we'll say it's in between an A and a B. We'll come back to that in a little bit though. So next we do have Claire with Kingdra, and I actually think that this sync pair is pretty decent. In general, without sync grid, it's kind of mediocre. I would say that it's pretty much a B tier. With sync grid, like I said, I definitely think that it deserves a higher ranking, probably an A tier, but without sync grid, just as, if you're a new player coming into this game, Kingdra, pretty B tier for me. Not amazing. I personally don't think that it's great unless you do put some work into the sync grid. Next we do have Noland and Pinsir. So Noland and Pinsir actually are a big favorite of mine just because I'm a huge bug type fan, but in general, as a physical striker, I would actually say that they are pretty freaking solid. I would say that they are a strong A tier for me. I don't have any problems with them. S tier, not so much. After he gets to his Mega, he does have a really, really strong place in the attack realm, but I still would say that A tier is pretty solid for me. He's not an absolute I must make this guy better. Do I want to spend materials on getting him to a 5-star? Me, maybe because he's bugged, but outside of just because he's a bug, and that's not a good reason, don't think that's a good reason. That's kind of the only reason that I would. So then we do have Gardenia, and I actually think that Gardenia is interesting and comparable in some to her kind of grass type counterpart Sceptile. Whenever Brandon only had Trico before we got the evolution into Sceptile, it was kind of awkward because they were pretty close, pretty similar in terms of performance. Brandon did inch out just a little bit ahead, but once we got Sceptile, it kind of just blew Roserade to the wayside. I would say that they're also pretty much a solid A tier. I think a lot of people do kind of overlook them just because of Sceptile, but they're a great backup to Sceptile. It is an amazing sync pair. If you just forget that Sceptile exists, Gardenia is perfect for you. So I will say that that's a pretty solid showing there. Next, we do have Flint with Infernape, and they did get a Sync Grid, but outside of like not trying to take Sync Grid into consideration, I definitely also do feel like they are an A tier. So at this point, I can already tell that I don't feel the same about Machamp as I do any of these three, so I will actually go ahead and just bump Machamp down to a B tier there, and we'll stick these guys up here closer to the front. Flint has an all-around amazing little package. He's got special attack, he's got physical attack, he's got dire hit, he's got a way to increase not only his physical attack but also his special attack. He's got an amazing kit, and then on top of his Sync Grid, he gets even better. I would actually go as far as to say that with his Sync Grid maxed out, I would feel like he's a pretty solid S tier actually. So without Sync Grid though, I am going to stick him in the A tier and leave him there. Next, we actually have Roxy, and okay, so here's my thing about Roxy. I don't ever say I've got to use Roxy. I've used her once in Battle Villa since it started, and that's only because I needed a decent poison attacker, and I wasn't very impressed with her. I don't honestly feel like I need to use Roxy ever. I would much rather go with something that's not super effective, that's just higher base stats, higher base power moves, than to go with something that's lower on both of those just for some super effectiveness. So I am actually going to put Roxy down here in the C tier. I am sorry, even though she just got an evolution, it didn't really necessarily help her in my book. Just don't really like it. So next we do actually have Chantal, which I actually feel like Chantal is a mediocre unit. I wouldn't say that she has anything that really like makes her absolutely dominating. She does have some interesting things. She does have a way to burn herself, which does actually hurt her, and it kind of like slowly chips away before she ends up fainting. So maybe a Sync Grid would actually help her out a ton here, but honestly, like, she's got quite a few use cases, especially in some of the events that we've been having lately, but that's kind of it. Like, I don't also ever see myself going, hey, I need to use Chantal. But I definitely think that she does have more of a place than Roxy. Sorry. Next, we do have Marshall. And really, if I'm comparing apples to apples here, Marshall and Bruno, like, it almost actually, I would say that these two probably, considering their kits, probably deserve to be in the same tier. So Machamp is more of a like jump in, do your damage, and just kind of like wail and wail and wail until you basically faint out. Whereas Marshall is more of a slower like chip damage kind of, and he has Drain Punch, which helps him regenerate some health. He kind of has more of a lasting effect, but he's not going to do nearly as much damage as Bruno. So maybe they should be considered in the same tier. Maybe Marshall should be actually in the C tier. Not really. I don't ever really use Marshall that much, so it's kind of hard to like really judge. Like, I always end up going Machamp over Marshall, so maybe that is a pretty big tail for me, but we're gonna put him right here for now. We'll reassess that here in a minute. So next then we actually have Cybold, and Cybold is a interesting little character here. So I am kind of on the fence because I don't feel like he has like amazing stuff. He does have a really good special attack. He's sort of a dual type attacker. Aura Sphere doesn't really do like a ton of stuff, but I guess you could consider him a dual type attacker, which is fine. But just in general, he's kind of mediocre. He's just kind of in the middle. He's not bad. He definitely does have a place, but he's just kind of meh for me. So that's a B tier. Next, we do have Howl, and Howl, in my opinion, is probably the best 4-star striker for me. So I would actually say that Howl goes into the S tier for me. Still, even after all of this time, I do feel like he is amazing. As a 4-star unit, if we compare like every single unit, 3-star, 4-star, and 5-star units all in one tier list, which, holy cow, that would be insane. I feel like he probably wouldn't be an S tier, but just in terms of like a snapshot of all of the 4-stars, he's definitely my favorite 4-star in terms of a striker. He has a ton of utility. He just actually got a Sync Grid, which is actually pretty freaking good. So it even boosts him further up the list for me, but I still think he's like one of the best. He was the person that I ended up dumping my 4-star power-ups into, got a 5-star unit, Hal, which is actually pretty freaking cool. So I think that that for me, Hal is still the number one. Now that I think about it though, like maybe Nolan, Gardenia, and Flint are all kind of right there next to him in my opinion. They all don't have AoE damaging moves though, so maybe like that's why I feel a lot more passionate about Hal, is just because of the sheer fact that he has some AoE damage, but hey, we'll take it. So next we do have Kahili, and Kahili is kind of interesting because she used to have a pretty strong place in terms of some EX challenges, but lately not so much because we don't really need Kahili anymore. You can kind of just power through it with some other units, and Kahili, in my opinion, like she's got some strong attack, she really does, but she's got this really awkward kit where she only really has like one good move, and it's not a great move. And then she has Beak Blast, which is one of those moves where like you go into a defensive position, when you get attacked, you like spit out tons of damage back, like something ridiculous like that. I'm not a huge fan of that personally, so I'm actually going to stick Kahili down in this C tier here. I'm just not a huge fan. Like, she does have her use cases, which means she doesn't deserve D tier, but she's also not that great. She doesn't have too many use cases, which makes me not feel like she deserves a B tier, but hey. Next, we actually have Valerie, which is our newest 4-star, our newest story unit, actually. And as a Fairy Striker, I talked about this in the Limelight. I really do feel like she got shafted. So she doesn't have like amazing moves. She doesn't have amazing stats. She doesn't really have an amazing kit. She's all around just kind of a meh unit, which kind of makes me feel like she deserves the B tier here. She just doesn't really like, I don't know, she just like is awkward. She doesn't really add a lot as a Fairy Striker. A lot of people were super hyped for it, but after looking at her kit, I was not impressed at all. I just really didn't think that she ended up getting what the Fairy Strikers needed. She doesn't really, as a Fairy Striker, she will be the best Fairy Striker because her only competition is going to be up against freaking Mina, and that's an easy win for Sylveon, but she's just not that amazing. So with that being said, do I think that Bruno has more use case than Valerie? Bruno. Do I think that Marshall, this is Marshall, guys, yes, I actually think that Marshall probably deserves this B tier. If Valerie is B tier, I think that Marshall deserves a B tier. So I feel pretty comfortable with our strikers like this. There's no horrible 4-star strikers. I will stand by that. There's no like absolutely horrible ones. Now moving on to our text though, this is where we might get into some horribleness. So first up is we actually have Whitney. I'm just gonna throw her down in the D tier. Whitney is just, I mean, I've seen some pretty like meme kind of content around Whitney where she actually does have some interesting like use cases. As a normal type, very bad, no super effectiveness. She doesn't have amazing moves. She just doesn't have a great kit altogether. I don't ever use Whitney. I actually don't think I've ever used her, period. So D tier for me. Next, we actually have Will, which I think Will is a definite S tier for me. He was, he's been a huge help in a ton of unique matches. I actually think that Will is probably going to be my next 5-star promotion. I definitely think he deserves it. He's got an amazing kit. He's got all these crazy things that he can do. Freaking stored power is just mind-boggling strong once you like boost it up. It's great. Next, we actually have Thornton, and Thornton is kind of in the meh tier for me. He's kind of just like, okay, I guess. He doesn't really have like a ton of use cases, but he definitely does have some. He's not like bad by any means, but he's definitely not good. I'm honestly contemplating putting him in the C tier, so let's stick this right here for now, and we'll reassess that. Next, we actually have Grant, and Grant, kind of feel like he's in the same. Well, do I think Grant or Thornton is more useful? Honestly, I don't think either of them are more useful than the other. Let's actually move both of these down into the C tier. I just don't. I mean, Thornton has that really cool passive where he can like resist damage for like certain moves, like, or no, it's not a passive. It's his It's his analysis. It's his trainer move where he can like take the latest typing that he got hit with and start to resist that. That's kind of cool. But it's just not really like a whole lot. Like, he's usable and he's got some use cases, but he's definitely not like an amazing sync pair, period. Next we have Wickstrom, which of course is one of my favorites. I definitely think he deserves the D tier though. As much as I love Wickstrom, he's just not hitting on a whole lot. He's just not got a lot. I just don't really like it. His kit is really awkward to use. He's got the whole like stance change or whatever that move is called. He's just, I'd stay away from Wickstrom in terms of actually trying to complete anything. He's just not gonna really help you. Next we actually have Sophocles. And I am also not a huge fan of Sophocles. He is kind of meh, but he's kind of worse than meh, so he doesn't really deserve B tier. He's kind of just in this weird section where he does have some use cases. There was a couple of EX challenges which he could be used for, but since those got nerfed, he's just not really even worth it. You might as well just go in with Howl and just demolish everything. He does have some endurance, which is nice, but he's not horrible, but he's definitely not meh. So that's where he deserves to be, in the C tier. Next, we actually have Viola. She does have a way to get to Surskit all the way up to Masquerain, which is kind of cool. So I am partial because of the bug type, but I also don't really think there is a great place in the current scene for Viola. I probably want to put her... I maybe want to leave her in C. I was gonna put her in D, but like thinking she has the way with Infestation, isn't it, where you can trap the opponent? That's actually kind of interesting. And then she does have a slight heal, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe she deserves a C tier. She does have some use cases, but nothing like insane. She's not something that I just always jump to and say, I need to use Viola. Pretty sure the only time I've used her since I've got her is in the bingo challenges for the weekly stuff. So yeah. Next we have Nanu and Persian, which I'm also not a huge fan of this sync pair. I mean, I only ever use them for their dark type damage. Man, I don't know. They're not, I mean, Nanu is not nearly as useful to me as... No, he's got to be a C tier for me. He's got his use cases. Like I said, I use him for his dark type damage. He does have, what is it, Screech? He has the one move that like lowers all defense or all special defense or something like that. That's actually pretty cool, which actually does give him a use case. He's not absolutely horrible, but he's also not just meh. He's just really awkward. I'm not a big fan. Koga, on the other hand, so Koga actually has this really cool thing that's called Poison. He can poison things, and poison is used a lot. So I actually think he's a solid B tier unit. Poison is amazing, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't, just because he has poison, I don't think he necessarily deserves an A tier. He's not like devastatingly good, but he's not devastatingly bad. He is meh. So like the poison, like if you watch the 3-star video, I talked about Bryson with the Pokemon I can't pronounce. With Haze, that makes that Pokemon amazing. It makes Bryson really, really good. But the other baggage that it carries around with it is kind of what brings it down for me. Koga is also in that position for me. I love the poison aspect to it. It makes things really, really good, and really like it makes Koga relevant for almost the entire battle if you can get off poison, because that Pokemon is going to constantly be getting poisoned, pending that they can be poisoned. But all the baggage that comes with Koga, he's B tier. He's not, it's not worth it to go A tier for me. I just don't really like it. Next we actually have Blaine, which I think Blaine, I'm abusing the B tier here, but Blaine has Sunny Day. He's the only sync pair that can do that. That's pretty freaking amazing. Actually, with Rapidash, we're going to boost this guy up to A. I will say that Blaine has gotten better with Rapidash because Rapidash has the highest speed in the game. I get them mixed up, whether it's Voltorb, whether it's Electrode or Rapidash, but definitely considering the evolution and the moves, I say that Blaine is probably an A tier for me. I mean, especially paired with things like Charizard, getting that extra oomph out of your moves. Like, that makes Blaine so much more relevant and so much more useful to me. I actually try to use Blaine whenever I can that it is plausible. Whenever I can actually use the sunny weather, I do that. Last, in terms of our text, we do have Lorelei, and honestly, I am not a fan of Lorelei. I don't want to say that she's absolute crap and put her in the D tier, but she doesn't do anything for me, ever. I don't ever use Lorelei. I don't think that she honestly deserves to be picked for most teams. Ice type, I mean, you're usually going to go with Price, Lapras. Like, even the events that Ice has been good in, Lapras was really like tossed off as a don't use this unit. It's bad. Don't use it. So I feel like it probably deserves the D tier more than it deserves the C tier. I really do think that. And then that's it for the text. So the last one that we have here is good old Drake. He is the only support unit still as a 4-star. Come on, DNA, where's your 4-star love at? As a support unit, I mean, if we're considering only 4-star support units, he's the best one for sure. But out of like all of the sync pairs, like how useful is Drake? I would say he's probably a C tier for me. He's got some cool use cases, and I've used him a little bit, but he doesn't actually have anything that makes him flat out amazing. He does have some boosts, which are kind of cool. He does have X special defense, I think, but he doesn't have like bar regen. He doesn't have like a striker boost, like an attack or a defense or an attack or a special attack or anything like that. Like, he's just kind of there, and he's there in case you need him, but I just don't ever really consider Drake good. So that is actually it for the 4-star units, guys. What do you think of this list? Do you like it? Do you hate it? What would you change? Do you think that Nolan deserves to be an S tier? Do you think that Hal only deserves to be an A tier? Do you think Valerie's way better than I've given her credit for? Let me know down in the comments below. Definitely give your reason as to why you would put things higher. I'd love to actually kind of get your guys' feel on what my opinions are versus yours. But I again here tried to not take into consideration specific modes. Some of these are way better in Battle Villa than I have given them credit for. I've also not tried all of them out in Battle Villa, but you know, they might be way better in that. But some of them may be better in co-op than in solo, and that kind of might change the list here. But it just in general, as far as like a wide-angled, big-picture view, I think this is pretty accurate for my tastes. This is how I feel about the sync pairs in terms of 4 stars, so we'll leave it at that. But let's actually go ahead and switch over. We are going to do a quick sync pair scout here. So we are looking for some dupes of red. If we could secure that, that would be lovely. I would much greatly appreciate. I only actually need one more dupe to be satisfied. So if you guys want to follow along, we're going to go in 1, 2, 3. Oh boy. This could be it. Could this be? Oh my god. Oh, okay. Please, please, let this be red. If this is red, I will just... Okay, it's not red. It's not red. It's a leaf again. Holy cow. Is that 5? That's 4 out of 5. Okay. So I have like... I actually do want Leaf to get like more better in terms of her sync move, because we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it in the next video. I'll save that for the next video. So thank you guys so much for hanging out. Thanks so much for watching. Always remember that you can join the Discord by clicking the link down in the description below. Also down there are links to YouTube memberships and Patreon if that's your thing. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and head out, but I'll catch you guys in the next video.